It is 7:01. If everybody would like to rise, and thank you for all of you who are already standing to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Those of you in the back, you sounded amazing saying the pledge. So, first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
I move the board approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Nick?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And Mr. Ackerman, honoring excellence.
Good evening, everybody. You may have heard in recent weeks some news. They've been the toast of the town all around town. Kansas City going to be up on the square tomorrow night, and we're glad to be joined by Coach Andy Learman and the Liberty North High School football team, the seniors, all seniors. He invited along with his varsity assistants. Coach Learman, would you want to join me up here, just because I don't want to stand up here long? Coach Learman, you see, he brought some hardware with him here tonight. I'm going to quickly read a summary, and then we're going to have Coach introduce his seniors. The Liberty North football team put the finishing touches on a history-making season with a resounding 38-7 victory over CBC in the Missouri Class 6 state championship game on Saturday night, December 2nd in Columbia, Missouri. The victory capped a dominant 2023 season that saw the Eagles finish with a 13-1 overall record and winners of their last 13 games. It's also been sustained success for this program, as they have now compiled a 36-4 overall record the past 3 seasons, including 20 consecutive conference wins that will continue into next season. This championship marks the first state championship in the sport of football in the history of Liberty Public Schools. To no one's surprise, there's been numerous individual achievements announced in recent weeks following the state championship win, and I will share a few of those in just a few moments. But what we'd like to do now is have, again, head coach Andy Learman introduce his seniors along with his varsity assistants. We're going to have him introduce them one at a time, and then, gentlemen, if you just step over here to the left of the podium. Coach?
All right. Thank you guys for having us tonight. Obviously, been a fun and exciting time the last couple of weeks, and just an honor to be here to visit with you guys who help make this school district work for us and allow us to do the things we do. So with that, I'm going to introduce these guys in no particular order, and you guys are going to come over and just kind of stand over here right now. Okay, so first, senior Austin Lee, Trey Snyder, Cole Young, Theo Gibson, Alex Barber, Jay-Sean Ross, Thomas Beckstead, Micah Joe Barnett, sorry Micah, Brock Snyder, Chisholm Dominici, Eric Mahinda, Manny Conley, Don McNeil, Wyatt Richardson, Dan Pritchett, Ethan Welcome, Keelan Smith, and Zach Henschke. And we got a few that couldn't be here tonight. We got a basketball game up at North, and I had a couple of rascals that are working tonight. And I was just telling a few people as we came in, it's as we've loosened the reins on these guys a little bit, and I don't have as much control over where they go and what they do right now. It's became a little bit more of a challenge. It's kind of like herding cats. So we're glad that these guys will be here, and I think we'll have a couple more coming in a little bit in just a few seconds.
Awesome. Let's give this senior class a round of applause.
The guys that really make this thing work, besides the players, they're the magic. And any good leader knows that to be any good at what you do, you got to have guys that are better than you, that do the work behind you, and these guys are incredible. Not only do they teach or work in our district for the most part, they work with our kids every day and do an incredible job of building relationships with these kids and allowing them to be successful. And so, in no particular order, again, offensive line coach Dan Llewellyn, special teams coordinator Mark Cross, associate head coach, this guy does all my work behind the scenes, Jim Houghton, also coaches corners, tight ends coach Logan Burgess, assistant offensive line coach Andy Snyder, assistant running back quarterback coach Cam Harris, our star safety coach, Coach Quick, our assistant offensive and defensive line coach Joe Sollers, our wide receivers coach Kendall Wright, our linebackers coach Joe Stamps, our safeties coach Alec Eslick, our quarterbacks and offensive coordinator Lance Moore, our senior, I like to call him, senior defensive assistant Jeremy Hilton, and our defensive line coach Adam Bowling. These guys are incredible men. Not only are they great coaches, but they do a great job of being great role models for our players, not only as dads, but just as great mentors to each and every one of them. I am very, very fortunate. We are very, very fortunate as a school district to have these guys a part of what we do. So our 2023 offensive and defensive staff.
Back there, we're going to make a couple of individual recognitions before we take a quick break. How many seniors, Coach?
31.
31. So that's a big senior class, and had a lot of good coaches tell me you're only as good as the senior leaders on your team, so you're in good hands. Coach, I want to take a minute. I know Melvin Laster, we've recognized him before. We're going to recognize him. He is on his way, so we're going to skip through Melvin and come back and get him in a moment. We're going to recognize Keelan Smith. Keelan, would you come up here and join us? Thanks for being with us. We want to recognize Keelan tonight, as earlier this month, Eagle wide receiver Keelan Smith was named the Missouri Class 6 Offensive Player of the Year. Some highlights to share about Keelan. His season stats from the year included 74 receptions, 1,268 receiving yards, and 17 touchdowns. He also broke numerous individual career receiving records that include 2,439 career receiving yards, 140 career receptions, and 31 career receiving touchdowns. I needed you on my fantasy football. Keelan will soon be off to Lincoln, Nebraska, soon, within the next few weeks, right, to continue his playing career with the Nebraska Cornhuskers, who I just saw maybe got a pretty good quarterback that's going to be joining us. Yes. So, Keelan, congratulations on this incredible award, and congratulations. Do we have a Melvin appearance yet, or do I need to start talking?
We might have to do some up-downs when he comes in.
You know what we can do? Coach, come on up here, because I'm going to embarrass you for just a moment, as we want to congratulate Coach Andy Lehrman, who was announced by the Missouri Football Coaches Association as the 2023 Missouri Class 6 Coach of the Year. He's coached now. He has coached now, been the head coach for 2 seasons, 25-2 record over those 2 seasons, so off to a great start. If you didn't have a chance, I'll give a little cheap plug for our podcast, In the Loop with LPS. He joined me, last week, and had a great conversation. And I think the thing that stood out to me about that interview was within minutes, he credited some of the guys that were his mentors back when he coached at Liberty High School. And I know it's all about competition and rivalry, but that just really stood out to me, how he recognized that. And some of the guys that have been there that bleed the Blue Jay blue, he credited. And I just thought that was really phenomenal. So if you get a chance, be sure to check that out. If you're bored. Exactly.
I did hear it's the number 2 downloaded podcast behind the Travis Kelce.
The Kelsey brothers. I assumed as much. Yes. But let's give Coach Andy Learman a big round of applause. Is Melvin here? If he's not, let me see if I can pull out some other awards from the podium. No, it's all good. It's all good. We will.
Let's do our standing
Yeah, that's
ovation.
right.
Oh, you know what? I've yet to give the official.
Might be in. Here he
So-
comes, I think. Here he comes, maybe.
Oh, thumbs up. Let's get. Timed it out perfectly, my friend. We've recognized Melvin now several times. I don't know if we've recognized you in person. We've did a virtual a few times, but Melvin has obviously been a huge contributor and leader on the Eagle defense, and I'll read a little bit about that achievement. It was announced earlier this month that Melvin had been named the Buck Buchanan Award winner as the best linebacker or offensive defensive lineman in the Kansas City Metro. What makes this award extra special is this is the 3rd consecutive year Melvin has won this award, which is absolutely unprecedented and I'm sure will never be done again. Yet to be done before, and he has done it. Melvin was also announced as the Missouri Class 6 Defensive Player of the Year for a 3rd time. Some highlights to share about Melvin. This is incredible. He played and started in every varsity game his high school career, freshman through senior, 52 games. Broke the school record for career total tackles with 374, which was over 100 more than the previous record holder. Also holds the school record for tackles for loss and sacks. Melvin will be off to play football for the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. They're going to get a good one, and that's a program I know that is on the rise. So big congratulations to Melvin Laster, 3-time Buck Buchanan Award winner. So with that, I will hand this award to Coach Learman and the crew, and then Ms. Reed, I will turn it over to you. I know, Denise, we have that last video we can maybe just kind of play over the final presentation. Of course, this is the crew down in Columbia as they were presenting the trophy and then the celebration will follow. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Ms. Reed.
As is our practice with such stellar accomplishments, we like to provide you with a standing ovation for all that you've done. And then we will take 10 minutes. There are a lot of people. And we will come back. If you are a person who is here to speak to the board, cards are out in the hallway. You can give them to any one of us. So with that, we have a 10-minute thank you session.
Do you want mine?
No, I'm good. So does anybody have any public comment cards? None. Then hold on.
I'm excited, but I'm exhausted.
We also moved the minutes up into the pre-consent agenda, so if I could have a motion. The approval of minutes for the study session.
I move the board approve the December 4th, 2023 study session minutes.
Second.
Nick,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
AJ,
Abstain.
Dan,
Yes.
Drew,
Abstain.
Karen,
Yes.
Angie.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And then on to our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure. Robert's rules provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval of the board by a single motion. Documentation concerning these items has been provided to all board members and the public in advance to assure an extensive and thorough review. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member.
I move the board approve consent agenda items 3.1 through 3.5.
Second.
Nick,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
AJ,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Angie.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And now we are on to whatever comes next. No, I'm sorry. I'm not scrolling as quickly. Reports from administration.
There we go. The first item then is 4.1, and that is our Innovation and Learning Report. As Dr. Moore gets ready to share, she has with her several at the back row. We're going to hear from Mr. Hand in a little bit, but Dr. Schmitz, Dr. Van Batavia, as well as Dr. Wilson. As you all know, they are finishing up their first semester in those respective roles. As we turn the page in this academic calendar, we did some restructuring. Mr. Hand is the veteran on the fourth floor, I believe. But we'll turn it over to Dr. Moore to hear from her. So.
It'll be a half-hour reflection on their first semester from each of us.
Certainly do that. Nobody may be here at the end of that.
Advance, right?
They can certainly do that. So, Dr. Moore?
Well, Dr. Tucker stole my thunder a little bit because I was going to talk about the amazing team that is sitting back there. And this week we finished up our iReady, the second one of the year, and just analyzing that data, we're seeing tremendous growth in our students at the elementary and the middle level. And that is because of that team back there, that they're going out and they're meeting with all of the building principals, building leadership teams, teacher teams, hanging out with them on early release Wednesdays and talking to them about that data and what we can do to help. And it is paying off to have them out there. We've just seen some great stuff so far, and we'll continue to work at that. And we know that this spring that we'll see even greater results. So I want to thank them, and I want to thank all of the buildings because they are using Wednesdays to really review that data and determine what comes next with their instruction. Included in the board report this evening is a PLP evaluation. So over the last year or so, we've been really trying to work on our evaluation process. And this one's taken a while. We originally were going to bring it to you in maybe September or October. And we really wanted to refine it and make sure that this first one was beneficial. So with the PLP evaluation, we looked at 4 questions. That process for evaluating these programs is led by Christopher Hand. And the team really, it was all hands on deck with that. We looked at belonging within the PLP program, attendance, EOC scores, and grades. And so you can look through that. I won't belabor it, but we saw that belonging was high. Attendance was comparable, but we really want to dig into that one a little bit more. EOC scores were tending to trend a little bit higher, and overall higher GPAs in math classes for students who attended the PLP program. Next steps, if you look in that evaluation, it will talk about, we want to look at what makes a student successful to do that type of learning, because that is unique, to sit and watch videos and then work with students in small groups. And then how can we continue to improve the attendance? So that was our first evaluation. We are currently working on one for AVID now that we are into year 5, I think, of that or year 6. We decided that it was probably the next one that we need to really look at and just make sure it's being effective for students. And then the next one after that, I think, is dropout. And so those we'll have done for you this year so that you can continue. And if you have feedback on those that you would like to send us, we are open to that. And then finally, we have a little video that I wanted to share with you. One of the things we're trying to do this year is really market some of our programs that we have throughout the district. And Dr. Van Batavia and the high school team, AVID teams, worked with Corey, who is great with video, and they put this little video together. It's just over 2 minutes, so we wanted to share that with you tonight.
I was having a little bit of trouble with assignments and stuff.
I was diagnosed with ADHD.
I struggled with taking notes.
Through middle school, I struggled a lot with turning in assignments on time and finding friends.
Both of my parents were college graduates, so they wanted me to feel more prepared for college, help me feel more prepared for classes, get a sense of belonging in the community. It was a safe spot almost.
I would describe AVID as a college and career prep program.
AVID is all about habits and planning.
It gives good groundwork for developing the skills of organization, preparation, and critical thinking. It's a 4-year program. You can stay in it all 4 years, or you can choose to only be in it 1 or 2 years. We start out with more study skills and working with organization and teaching kids how to take focused notes.
It taught me a lot of note-taking skills and better learning strategies.
It's definitely helped me stay organized and know when to ask for help. And then as they go through the program, they do college research, then they do career research.
It's really helped me figure out what I want to do and where I want to go for that. And if you're just struggling with picking a career, it will really help you get to whatever you want to do in life.
I found my way to a nursing career that I found very fit for me. It's about opportunity for all kids.
And we get to celebrate those choices and things that we see.
To watch them go through the whole program and to see the accolades that these students get for things that they've achieved is so rewarding.
I think it really helps students get started on a positive note.
So we help them to figure out their next, and we're saying you go and you be great.
The people you meet in there, they become some of your closest friends.
I have built the strongest family since freshman year with the students that I've been with in AVID.
I think AVID is just such a great class that can really keep you on track through high school.
So AVID really is going to help me find my place at high school. And it's giving you the opportunity to say, hey, I know what's good for me. I have the tools, I have the knowledge, and I can make the decisions based on my passion. And then ultimately, I'm confident in my decisions because I have the knowledge.
We're really proud of the high schools and the work they've done with this program to give students opportunity. So just wanted to highlight that.
And add the kiddies.
And
So how many students are in AVID? Approximate.
Around 250 to combined?
Yeah, about 250.
Yeah, 250.
And so how many teachers do we have working with them?
We have several over here at Liberty High. They've spread it out a little bit, and so I think there's 4 or 5. We have a couple teachers who are trained at Liberty North. We have one main teacher, Tim Chambers, who's the coordinator, and he does most of that, but we actually have found that we have another teacher who just transferred in within the past year or two, Dr. Camplitt, and she's AVID trained, and so we're going to bring her on board and have her do a couple classes as well.
So then, do they go by class? So as a freshman, you're in this one, and then do most of them stay all 4 years?
Most of them do. We have some that come in as a sophomore, and so they're not in it necessarily their freshman year, but then they might join their sophomore year, and they can join at any time, right? Because there's something different each year. But several of them, I think, last year at Liberty High, I think there were about 12 or so of the 20 that stayed in all 4 years, which is pretty good, because as you get into your senior years and you're trying to fit in all the other courses and the internships and the things that you want to do, it gets harder to keep that.
It's such a great program. I'm so glad that we've got that many students involved in that.
And they are working, part of doing this video is to really send it to the middle schools and send it to families so that we could recruit at the middle level, because there's sometimes a tendency to think, oh, this is for students who, just whatever they think. And so for this, it is a tool, right? Not just first generation college students, but really helping students with focus notes and picking out careers.
Have we moved farther away from that? It's designed so heavily for students who are first generation to be being more, this is a great pathway to prepare for college.
Yeah, we were actually talking the other day about a couple of parents who are educators in other districts whose students are or have been in the program, and both parents went to school, and you even heard that from a student in there, but the parents just know the benefits of the program, and they're like, I just want my student in there, right? And so it is still beneficial for those students, but it gives those other students as well who might be first generation just that opportunity to get a little bit more guidance, because maybe somebody at home doesn't know how to help them.
It's just such a great program in so many ways, so I'm so glad. Thanks for the video. It's
we
really
appreciate
good.
the support too from the board, because that's what we hear a lot at when we go to the Summer Institute, that a lot of programs don't make it because Board of Education aren't necessarily on board, and because it can be pricey to send people to get trained, and so to have the support of you all is very much appreciated.
Well, I think if you're serious about student achievement and success, you want everybody to have the tools that they need to succeed. And so if we know from evidence that this helps students develop those types of skills, why wouldn't we want to invest in that?
Thank you.
Are there other districts that actually run Abbott in middle school?
Middle school and elementary, yes. So there
Is there a reason why we haven't considered that?
Well, we're working on that, AJ. Our next task is to try to get it down to 8th grade, and then that way those students could move just into 9th grade. I have gone on several visits I had to get certified to be a district director, and so I went to several school districts across the country that have it in elementaries and middle school, so I was able to see how they offer it. Like at the elementary, it's a special, and then in the middle school, same thing, and then in some schools, it's just infused within the curriculum. So our next goal is to move it down to the middle school, and Dr. Van Batavia was actually at a school that had it at the middle level, so his expertise will be invaluable with that.
Thank you.
Other questions of Dr. Moore this evening?
So we're year 6 of the math PLT, right? Roughly.
2014.
Okay. It looks like it's going very well. We're happy with it. Is there plans to push that into Liberty High School outside of North, or?
We've had some pockets of teachers try it. We haven't gotten there quite yet to have that conversation, but it's definitely worth the conversation. Just have not gotten there. We've had some pockets at Heritage that have done that with their algebra classes. They did it last year to kind of see if that would encourage students to move into it at North as a freshman.
And that was part of the impetus to have it at North,
as
we were designing HMS by Design. So 6 matriculating up, and then eventually would hit Liberty North High School. So then the net was cast to departments at Liberty North about interdisciplinary, project-based learning, personalized learning, and how departments might approach that. And math was one of the first ones to really like wrap their head around that and move forward with it for PLP to emerge. That's a little bit of the genesis story.
Sure.
So then it is a choice, so you can go that path with PLP if it works for you, or you can have a traditional seated Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2 course as far as choices and options. So always room to grow it and expand it, not just in math, but then across other content areas as well. But then you also had the development of your 2 micro schools with North Nation by Design and then EDGE. So you've seen some outgrowth of that. So certainly always a possibility.
Is that potential, so you've raised something that I didn't thought of. Is that potentially with the micro schools a reason why we're seeing a little bit of drop off from an enrollment standpoint in the PLP, that now they've found alternatives that better meet their needs or their interests?
I think overall choices.
Sure.
Kids have a lot of choices to elect from, right? Whether it's starting earlier in their math journey in middle school, so that by the time they get to high school, they may be in geometry, or perhaps leveraging the summer. So what else
And
would
right
you
now, if you're in North Nation by Design, your math class is included in that. I'm not sure that that'll stay that way forever, but right now it is, right? So then you don't have the option to do it. And then I think, as Dr. Tucker said, as you get into high school, there are so many classes that our students can take. And that's great because there's so much choice. But then at the same time, that kind of hurts programs because you want to take this, but then you can't do that. So you have to start to choose what you're going to do.
Yep. So back to the Liberty High School question and distributing it there. Is it, I'll be careful how I word it, but it may just come out. We haven't had the interest from the teachers to execute against it?
There hasn't been an interest to do it that way, but you know, we're always open to those conversations.
Got it. Okay.
Other questions of Dr. Moore?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you for being here tonight as well.
Next is our Student Equity and Access Report from Dr. Andrea Dixon-Sehorn.
Good evening. I'm kind of glad that we were having that conversation about AVID and the possibility of bringing it to the middle level, because I think that conversation piece marries well with the Equity in Schools grant, the work we've been doing for the past 2 years with those campus visits. I've had the opportunity to go on 3 of them at this point, a career center and then 2 university settings. And so it just would be great to be able to kind of plug kids in to this AVID opportunity around this idea of writing your ICAP and it opening up just a whole new world for you when you get ready to go to high school. So just glad to hear that it's on the table for discussion. I have already mentioned that the fact that we now are in our 2nd year for our Equity in Schools grant. We just wrapped up this semester, those visits. And so that means 2nd semester kids will just spend time working on their individual career and academic plans. And then also I'll be working very closely with Colleen Jones to just kind of figure out how we can get some more feedback from students on that experience. It was good to be there with kids and with staff and hear some anecdotal data, but then get some more formal data to figure out how we continue to move it forward. And then also we are having active conversations about folding that into just our regular budget next year and beyond. So very excited about that opportunity for our 8th grade learners. I do want to highlight on behalf of student services, special programs, and special services some key pieces that are included in our December board report. On behalf of student services, the Liberty Alliance for Youth, LAFI, hosted a youth leadership summit last week for our LPS middle school students that are in the FRESH clubs. And just to clarify, FRESH stands for Finding Reasons to Exercise Safe Habits. So students from Liberty North's FRESH Club facilitated most of the sessions and activities for our middle school learners. This was held at Woodneath Library last week, and there was a focus on just the brain, self-care, inspiring ideas and activities that students could then take back to their schools and share with their peers. Had an opportunity to be there and see it firsthand, and it was a wonderful experience. We also want to thank Beacon Mental Health formerly known as Tri-County, for being there and leading some breakout sessions for our students. And then also a big thank you to our Liberty North Fresh Club students who helped to inspire their younger peers to be proactive in their leadership and self-care efforts. For special programs, our gifted department would like to congratulate again Renee Sturtz and the Peak class, our 5th graders from Shoal Creek, for special recognition as one of the top 20 for the Battle of the Brains competition, which is sponsored by Burns and McDonald. There were 740 submissions this year, and winning teams will be announced on January 23rd at a ceremony at Union Station. So we just want to say again, congratulations. And then for our Special Services Department, we did note in the report this month that there has been an increase in the number of students that are receiving IEP services. We noted that last year we served approximately 1,526 students, and this year we're already at 1,617 students as of the December 1st count that we have to submit to the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So we're mindful of these increases. That does impact programming and staffing, and so those conversations are ongoing. And as we just continue to just monitor the data, we are tracking and have been now, we have 5-year staffing trends that we are able to monitor. And as I was looking back at that data today, I noted that on average for the past 4 years, we've added on 4.25 staff members each year for the past 4 years. So this isn't just refills or replacements, but these are just add-on new hires. And again, that's just keeping up with the demand and the increase of the students that we are serving. So those are the highlights that I wanted to share. Also wanted to make note that the annual report and review for the Department of Student Equity and Access is included this month in the report. And I think of all the pieces in that report that I am most excited about the building equity cadres, and especially this year at the encouragement and challenge and charge, if you will, from Madam Board President to add that student component this year has really been a game changer for us. And so we'll find some opportunities in second semester to get some feedback, particularly from our students about their experiences serving on the cadres. And as a matter of fact, when I was at the LAFI conference, I saw a student that served on the cadre, and he said, "Hey, don't I know you from somewhere?" I said, "Well, tell me what school." And then he proceeded to explain which middle school and said, "Oh, yeah, I was on the cadre." And I was like, "Well, good to see you again." So I think for me, that is just a very proud moment for us here in Liberty to have those cadres and then to be in a position to host those again for at least one more year. So that's what I wanted to share in the report for this month, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
I was daydreaming earlier, reading, it's under culturally responsive practices, and I seen the word equity lens tool, actually equity tool, and I said, oh, we got a way to fix all of us. And then I realized that wasn't what I was looking at. But my question is around the tool. How's it working in terms of curriculum?
I'm glad you asked that question. So first of all, I want to give credit to the Curriculum Audit Task Force. So that was a team of about 32 LPS staff members at both the elementary and secondary levels who over a 2-year period, so really just coming out of COVID, over a 2-year period just said, you know what, we would like to do a better job of when we are selecting resources that we're going to use in the classroom, vetting the resources, developing resources, because we are an OER district, Open Education Resource District. So that means there's a lot of things that teachers make and take, right? And so just wanting to be more mindful of what we are putting in front of students as we're delivering instruction. And so over that 2-year period, we just did our due diligence, did some research on other similar resources, tools, checklists, guides, whatever you would want to call it. And so we now have landed on a tool that has been reviewed by the board, has been reviewed by our curriculum councils, both elementary and secondary, our professional development council as well, committee, and also has been piloted, if you will, by teachers who had nothing to do with that 2-year process. And so in terms of how the tool is being used, we employed what I'm going to refer to as a soft launch this year with the use of the tool. Dr. Schmitz over here has been working very closely with our innovation and learning coaches who have been utilizing the tool. For example, as we're embarking upon a social studies curriculum, a review at the elementary level, just using the tool again just as a lens. It is not a one and done kind of thing. It's not going to fix the problems of the world, but it is just an opportunity and experience for teachers to use the tool to just think about, hey, is this really the best resource to use in delivering instruction? And we've tried to attach it to our NEES Standard 6.2, which is around this idea of teacher communications with students are sensitive to just physical, intellectual, cultural, various differences. And then we've also been mindful of just really having conversations around the tool, whether in grade level teams, departmental meetings, and that's really been the approach that we've taken informally with the tool for this year. So hopefully that answered your question.
It does. Thank you.
Other questions of Dr. Dixon Sehorn?
I have one. I think you mentioned 4.25 on average increase in number of employees around in response to the
SPED teachers.
Yes. So it's just teachers, or does that include process coordinators or other administrators that might be in charge of
It could
managing?
be a combination of any SPED staff member, whether they're certified or others that provide more specialized services. But on average, it's been about 4.25 in terms of ads of the SPED personnel.
So we're looking at, so that category would include like teachers, but it could also be specialized services.
It could be a process coordinator. It could be a BCBA. I don't have the specifics in front of me, but I do know on average it's been about 4.25.
Okay. No, that's, I mean, that is significant.
And again, that's in keeping with the demand. And just making note that, yes, we have approximately 11.16% of our students that qualify for SPED. That number is still lower compared to the state, which is around 13%. And the number, if you look at the historical data, I had a chance to look at that, 25 years worth of numbers, it ebbs and flows.
Right.
From year to year or every 2 or 3 years. So we just meet the demand when it arises.
And so do we find that our process coordinators, our case managers, is their docket, I mean, so it's fluctuating as well? Are we seeing any strain in that where that would need?
Where there's the strain, that's when we then have the conversation about where we need to add staff. And again, that just fluctuates year to year, again, depending on the number or the increase or even decrease of number of students receiving SPED services.
So the number that you reported, the DESI report for special services, is that K through 12, or I know when we were at the ECC, does it go down to the children?
Yes, it's every student that qualifies for an IEP, so from pre-K on. And again, that number 3 months from now could increase. Right, but that was the official December 1 count. Yes, for the entire system.
But may not include those that qualify for a 504, just to delineate.
Just our SPED services,
Correct.
IEP.
Okay.
Yes.
Other questions of Dr. Dixon Sehorn?
I better run now while
Thank
I'm
you. 4.3 then, our financial report from Ms. Cindy Sullivan.
Good evening. As we near the end of the first half of the year already, if you can believe that, we finally can report to you that we have wrapped up all of the required reporting pieces for last year. Something we don't talk too much about. As we bring the audit to you in November, that triggers 2 final reporting things that we have to complete, which we don't talk much about. One of those is the submittal of the audit and financial reports and the annual Secretary of the Board report to the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So those are required. We do get points for those on MSIP, which you saw part of that, so that's very important to get all of that filed with the state by December 31st. The other thing that we're required to file after the approval of the audit is the continuing disclosure piece of issuing bonds with the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board. And so if you ever have waded through, which I'm hoping you haven't, the big bond closing document, that's a requirement that we sign off on, specifically stating that we will provide year-to-year reporting on our finances to people that are interested in purchasing our bonds. So that's always required to be filed through the Emmett data port by December 26th. So those are the final two pieces that we have reported. Always glad to put a bow on that because at this point we're working in 3 years, last year, this year, next year. And so to put one behind us is always a good thing. The Audit and Finance Committee did review documents, and I had one question that I wanted to pass on to you that you might have noted. They were talking about and asking about cash flow and noticing that cash flow, when you look at the chart that's included in the finance report this month, is quite a bit lower as far as the amount of funds that we have in the bank compared to prior years. And as you'll recall, last year at this time, we had received about $3.5 million in ESSER funding. So throughout this whole year, you are going to see the operating funds on hand are going to trend at a lower pace than last year. And I encourage you to recall when you're reviewing financial statements that that's the case for all of our financial data. We've talked about this, and it's just a great reminder when she asked about this, that all of our data for the past 3 years is tainted with ESSER, so it's going to look a little bit off. So keep that in mind. It's always great to ask, is that related or is something else going on? So unless I'm letting you know something else is going on, you can rest assured that the ESSER funds are driving the differences in what you're seeing in the financial reporting. So they wanted that reminder, so I thought I would present that reminder to you as well. So we're doing very well. Things are trending as they should be. We had, at the end of November, 64 days worth of operating cash available. We did receive a small amount, $2 million worth of property tax in November. We will receive more in December. And then our biggest allotment will come in January, so we are doing very well as far as what kind of operating cash we have on hand to pay the bills for December. So no need to worry there, but I would like to pass that on to you since they did ask that question as well. We didn't have any other questions that were of note to submit to you, and the other members did review the statements. We did also provide to you this month our annual review, and what's interesting about ours is we do the same work year in and year out, so it's a challenge to get something that might be very interesting for you to read. So we tried our best and provided you a little picture of what we do on a yearly basis. So I will take any questions.
You did give us an alternative to read the bond filing. So
I did.
No, within the report, I appreciate that you bring forward the internal control management piece as a reminder of all the processes we have to ensure that we're properly safeguarding the finances. So thanks for that.
That's a big part of our work that goes unnoticed, and as it should.
Right.
Because those are just the day-to-day out safeguards that we employ. Yeah.
I certainly appreciate the effort to look ahead and think about, I just imagining projecting certain things like whether it's legal expenses or personnel expenses in a very dynamic environment, and then with all the restrictions that public accounting has, it is very complex, and you have a staff that I know works very hard, and so I'm definitely grateful. I know we're all grateful for the work that you do to kind of keep us in a position where surprises don't put us in a hole.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I'll pass that on to them. I do have a tremendous staff that works behind the scenes that are here day in and day out doing this work.
As always, I enjoy reading the message. It's always fun. But what I also appreciated was the information you placed within that report makes it easy to understand what I consider a very difficult subject to understand.
Good.
Just because I'm not a math person or a finance person. So I appreciated that because it helps to understand the amount of different things, even though it's the same year in and year out. But there is safety in the similarities.
Well, I appreciate that, and because it is true that if things weren't the same year in and year out, or we had things to report to you that might indicate there were problems. So being the same is good.
Yeah, and the explanation of the ESSER funds is a very good one, because I think people forget that we had that kind of money flowing.
Right.
And it's gone.
Yep.
Or it's leaving, or it's not coming back. Or
There is we have some we will receive this year. ESSER 3 will wrap up this year, but yes, by and large, it's gone.
When you've talked about the ESSER cliff, right, like for districts nationwide, but I think I remember you saying that probably Liberty's better positioned compared to some because we didn't receive as much, or
That
is it
is
more
true.
that, okay.
No, that is 100% true. We, in comparison to some of our neighboring districts or other districts in the state, because of the poverty level that we are low, comparatively speaking, and our census poverty rate is smaller, and we did not receive as many funds. And we were very careful not to spend them on repeating expenses, and very conscious about what we did with them, so that when they went away, we weren't left trying to fill their void on repeating expenditures.
And that's the point I was going to raise. I mean, the guidance that we've gotten through that is being smart with how we do it, because it's not going to be there forever.
Right.
And so it's taken a lot of good planning and advice from you and your department to us to be there. So.
And namely, spending those dollars on salary and benefits, right? That's the biggest recurring expenditure, as we know. A lot of districts learned that lesson back when, if you recall, early 2000s in the recession, and the relief dollars that were dispersed then. So,
And I will point out in the operating projection, the big thing, as we lovingly call it, we're very careful to project out those revenues and expenditures so that with a 5-year look, even though years 3, 4, and 5 are just really rough, that you know that we're keeping the district in a safe financial position based on that fund balance, and making sure that those revenues, once they're added, are taken back out in that document so that you can see how it affects the ending fund balance.
You are very good at the recurring expenses message.
Thank you.
other questions for Ms. Sullivan?
Thank you. I'd like
you.
to report.
Next item, then, 4.4 operations, Mr. Stephen Anderson.
Good evening. A few things I wanted to pull out of the report that's loaded up for you tonight. First of all, health services, as they mentioned in the report, spent some time the past month, one, connecting with middle-level students who are interested in learning about careers in nursing, and spent a day doing that. They also conducted some CPR and emergency training at the Early Childhood Center, which was very well received by that team, and then also ran a crisis drill at Lewis and Clark. So just wanted to call them out for that added work on top of what they do on a day-to-day basis. Also wanted to mention Jason Bright and his team in the purchasing and distribution department. This is the 10th year where they supported the Liberty Community Christmas Tree Project and delivered over 450 packages of food from our schools to Heritage Hall for distributions. That's 10 years running, which is great. They love helping that program out. And then also wanted to mention KidZone, if you took note of that. As part of their service learning project, they engaged their students. In between 11 schools, over 800 items were collected from families and then donated to that program. And then the managers came together afterward to cook a meal for those families. So appreciate Miss Megan Lucian and kind of her leadership of that department. Also related to operations departments, I did want to acknowledge and thank the facilities crew kind of in advance. I think as you all realize, as we get ready for break, they kind of keep it churning through break, and we'll really be working on a lot of work orders that are kind of backed up a little bit, as well as some of the projects that are highlighted in the report under the capital project list. I have two quick updates on the bond work. First of all, the main report identifies all the work. It's really, everything's kind of going on schedule. We feel really good about where things stand. We're expecting turf to be delivered by the end of this week, which will be exciting. That is just kind of keeps us right where we need to be on schedule, and in this 50-degree weather, hopefully that holds a little bit. Will really help them kind of get a good jump here into January and February. So all that's going well. As you know, the tennis courts are done. and those other projects that I identified in the report, kind of the schedule and where they're at in the process. I also thought, just to conclude, that this might be a good opportunity to show a couple images of the next round of projects. We've kind of teased this out over the past few months. The first slide here is just to direct anybody, and certainly anybody watching at home, the website. We're keeping that updated of all these reports that we file with you all, so that anybody's interested in learning more about any project and where it's at schedule-wise. This is a great resource. Also, if they have questions, they can click a button and ask us questions, and we've been getting a handful of those over time. Hit the next slide. So this is Heritage. These are some of the initial kind of drawings of kind of what this space will look like. And certainly if you're interested in learning more, you can come connect with us. But every floor is getting a fairly significant amount of attention, rehabilitation, renovation. Very complicated work just due to the nature of the building and the additions over time. A lot of HVAC complications with all the cutting up of space. It's been a massively challenging project. That will be a very challenging construction project. We're working closely with the building, making sure that they're keyed in once we start having a schedule and moving into their space. And this will be a good couple-year project for us. We'll be breaking it out into phases. So that will be very exciting, but very obvious what we're doing there over the next couple of years. And then the next slide is Liberty High School. This is a little bit more contained. So this involves the, is it the 100s? Is that where SPED in? Yeah. So SPED and FACS are in the 100s wing, and so that's getting a complete makeover. That's kind of that little area kind of in the middle, top middle. That will be phase one, so we'll kick that off here this summer and get that wrapped up. It might bleed into the fall. And then the next summer, so summer plus summer of 25, that's when we'll get after the cafeteria, scramble area, and kind of continue that corridor from the fine arts wing down to the main entrance. And so that's an exciting project. I think that will finish up that space really well. And again, that'll take a couple of years. And then the last one, I think, is the academy. We just wrapped up these designs here, and this was working very closely with the folks at the building. A little bit challenging. You may remember initially we were looking, so that lower aerial shot there where there's a black box and a blue box. Mm-hmm. I apologize. I did that at the last minute to try to give some sense. It's not very well done. But initially, the black box was going to be the building. And what we ended up doing is realizing that we could really get more done in that pad where that blue box is, which is where the existing playground is for the old Montessori school. And so that's where that new building will go. And so it'll be a shop kind of space, very flexible, where they can move in dependent upon the needs of the students and the programs they're interested in. We can really flip it out easily to accommodate different demands of that space. And then we also, just at where we created a breezeway to connect to the existing building. That will really help us on that secure entry, to maintain one secure entry so that anybody within the building can kind of circulate easily down to that new space. This one will get going here in the spring of 24, and that'll take us a good year probably to finish. Maybe we can get it done a little bit sooner than that. And then that box, the black box that's over there, that's going to be a court. I think it's a basketball court and then 2 pickleball courts kind of the other way that they're excited to have. And we're going to try to get that in this summer so that they can use it for next fall. That's all I got.
It's a lot of work.
Questions.
Mm-hmm. I mean, architecturally, it looks great, integrating back into the academy overall.
Yeah.
The other thing on the tennis courts at Liberty High School, those are open to public if they want to use them as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there any piece of heritage that's not being touched?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's such a, yes. Yes.
I'm really excited about the grade level kind of grouping
Yeah.
efforts that'll happen there. As someone with a kid that's walking up and down stairs several times a day.
I should have shared, and Heritage is a great example, as is, well, all three. Heritage and Liberty High were a little more complicated and really leaned heavily onto those teams and into those teams. Dr. Moore was present, others, Dr. Van Bentavia, which has really helped us. You know, we're good at a lot of what we do in our teams and the architects, but without the involvement of those building teams and the academic folks, really helped these kind of come together pretty well.
Two things on the energy conservation piece. I know here in your report, we participated in something with Evergy over the summer, got a monetary payout of just over $11,000, which is great. The other piece on the LED replacements, I know they happened at Epic and a couple other buildings. I asked my kids, so have you noticed anything different? They said no. which is great, right? I think there's been concern about, well, what are these lights, are they going to flicker, are they going to be blue like we see in some places throughout the city? They're not. I mean, it appears to have been just a very smooth transition, so that's great.
This is LED.
This is LED now too?
Well, this was done a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to correct the Evergy rebate program, one of the reasons we really scrambled in this year was they're hopefully going to renew that. We just got our first checks, I think quarter of a million? Was that the total rebate? 250 grand? Yeah, so it was great. We moved quickly because we're going to get a whole lot more value out of that project because of those rebates.
That's real money.
It is.
I mean, that's great.
On the buses that we are ordered, you have them categorized in your report as over miles, under max miles, and fleet buses not replaced. Those are the kind of the three categories.
Yeah.
So we're replacing I guess I don't know what fleet buses not replaced is. That category of 3 of the route buses. Are those 3 of them that we've ordered, or are they? I guess I'm just not clear on what that category is.
Right. My best understanding are as we've flexed out the fleet more over time, that those traditional fleet buses, traditional transits, we're not replacing those kind of one for one. We're replacing them in different ways.
Okay.
But let me look into that.
So they're not being replaced. So the ones we're replacing are addressing the over max miles category?
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions of Mr. Anderson? Okay. Thank you. 4.5 then, our Human Resources Report. Dr. Sarah Marriott.
Good evening. A few updates for you this evening as we start to ramp up for recruitment for the 24-25 school year. It will start getting quite busy for the Human Resources Department as well as many other of our departments that help us and assist with that process going into January. But some updates regarding some of the work that we have initiated in preparation for that. So one of the priorities that we are aligning with our strategic plan as a district is making sure that we are really focused in on diverse recruitment strategies, and that is something that we've initiated through some advertisements, through some diverse publications. And so we're getting ready to share some recruitment information with Block, Dos Mundos, and the Globe to start that process. We are also pool hiring, so we just chatted about that at the last meeting, and so we have hired 5 elementary classroom teachers in anticipation for the 24-25 school year already, and 1 special education teacher for the 24-25 school year. And we are very excited to share that through this process, our first Grow Your Own Teacher candidate is hired, thanks to you all this evening, and will actually start at LPS in January. So we are so excited to welcome Zayshawn back to LPS and in the capacity as a teacher in our district. We are also participating in some monthly recruitment meetings with our team members, and we've also looped Dallas into a few of those conversations to talk about some strategies and some potential videos that we can really start deploying to share some of the great things that are happening at LPS and really to expand our presence in the greater community at large. Another piece that we're continuing with is our professional development series each month for our administration. We are also expanding that second semester, and we're going to be offering some very individualized, more intensive sessions for our supervisors of our classified or operations teams. And so we're working to organize that based really on whatever it is that they are needing in their particular department. So thanks to Ms. Tanika Brown, who's going to assist with those presentations as well. And then the last piece that has really just occupied our time over the past 6 months, but has maybe increased over this past month, is really working to support all of our staff and our administration through a variety of measures such as growth plans, working through work accommodations, as well as processing some medical leave requests, and all of those things just to make sure that we are providing the best supports possible to our team members and always looking for ways to improve those methods as well. Any questions?
So I'm pleasantly surprised in the personnel report on hires, to see those pool, am I using it right? The
Yes,
teachers
pool
that are
hires.
hired, which is awesome. I was surprised to see that they're clearly currently employed in another district somewhere. Is this a trend that we're seeing amongst districts to where they're hiring for the future and it just happens to be they're coming from other districts as they finish out their obvious contract with that district?
Well, a couple of pieces with that. I think I would say that, yes, other districts are also employing the pool hiring strategy that are neighboring districts for us, but I think it also really speaks to the quality work environment that LPS provides, is that it's very attractive to a lot of people that perhaps work in other districts, and so maybe they're enticed to come work at LPS for all of the great things that they've heard. So it's one, we love having brand new people, but we also really love having experienced teachers as well.
Great.
That's a great blend.
I'm almost apprehensive to ask the question because it's that time of year where people get sick, and we've had like a number of years where we've talked about sub-fill rates, but how are we doing on that front, and, you know, kind of covering things, you know, and we've had discussions, I feel like, repeatedly this time of year. Sorry, it's just an itch I drew asked. So.
And that's a very valid question this time of year, too, and we carefully monitor that, especially as we approach holidays or longer breaks, as we also get into the winter seasons where we know that people are more susceptible to illnesses. And we have actually stayed rather stable, with the exception of maybe one or two pockets of days where we've had a little bit higher percentage of staff that are out. We are working with Kelly Services to make some very minor adjustments for second semester that I think will even increase those fill rates. So thank you to Dr. Moore for helping coordinate that, as well as Dr. Dixon-Seahorn of really working through that process of how we can best support and fill all of those positions.
And we get a daily update on that.
They do, like 3.
Usually by 9 o'clock, in terms of looking at both certificated and support staff. So, great question. Anything else for Dr. Marriott? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It's like Christmas on this right side. It's a little dark over there.
Dr. Marriott, I observed the same thing. I was like,
This is
what happened
recorded.
with you?
Last item under administrative reports, 4.6, just a couple items to add to the superintendent's report. Really focusing on 2 items this evening for you. Strategic planning, as we talked earlier in December at our study session, as we turn the page into 2024, really looking to engage our community more broadly on what the future of Liberty Public Schools might look like, and contracting with G&D consultants. Most of you have met Scott Fuller, who helped facilitate our last strategic planning process going on 5 years ago. Hard to believe it was 5 years ago. But we're going to go back to our community and engage again to solicit feedback on several fronts: the graduate profile, our vivid vision, but then certainly areas that then will inform our strategic plan, and more importantly, action plans moving forward. So we're going to kick that off actually with you all on January 9th at our study session, and we will walk through a couple items on our agenda, our book study. Mr. Bartlow has offered to lead those next 2 chapters, just as a reminder.
I did, but Mr. Bird stepped in and said that he would.
Okay. Mr. Bird is going to do that for us, that's right. And then we will turn it over to Scott to help talk us through kind of where we are at, the work that we did previously, but then also some foreshadowing for the spring semester, engage you all in some back and forth feedback and discussion as to informing strategic planning. That meeting will wrap up around 9 o'clock, and then we will take Scott over to Liberty High School, where he will facilitate a similar conversation with our district leadership team through to about noon. Break for lunch, and then that afternoon we're going to be on site at campuses doing a couple things, having Scott connect in some focus groups with both students and staff, and then for our younger grades, taking him on some walkthroughs into classrooms to see kids in action. That is fruitful in terms of kind of seeing how things are playing out with some of our youngest kids as they age up. Focus groups are more meaningful, but then certainly with staff. He'll do that again on Wednesday, the 10th. We've filled his schedule and working on finalizing it for those 2 days. Thanks to Dr. Moore for helping facilitate and coordinate that. We'll bring him back latter part of January, February, March for more on-site visits with committees, with parents, with business members, our operations departments. We'll also leverage some virtual engagements with those various groups as well to be able to maximize time over the course of the spring semester. As you look at the timeline deeper into March and into April, it's at that point that we're starting to synthesize information that we've received and feedback that we've received, not only in our focus groups, our walkthroughs, our interviews, but then also through a survey, which we're working on finalizing, that will be pushed out early spring semester. By the time you get to the end of the academic year, around May, really we're looking at finalizing a draft of what that strategic plan might look like, or any updates to our graduate profile and Vivid Vision. I say all that knowing with a caveat that all of that is pretty fluid as you provide feedback and direction as we talk further as an administration on how best to effectuate that this spring. So that was the first item I wanted to share. Secondly, this week we know that the embargo from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education was lifted in regard to MSIP 6 APR release of information. We're going to talk a little bit more in depth about that here in a few moments as Mr. Hand shares with the board some of our findings, initial findings. We're also beginning to dive into building level data, which then will take us into the spring semester. You may recall back in March of last spring, we did a presentation to the board at a study session providing you a comparison of MSIP 5 and MSIP 6, and that the rules have really changed. Under MSIP 5, you had over 300 districts that fell into that 90% or above designation on an APR. You do not have that. In fact, you have very few that fall into that category of 90% or above. It really more resembles a bell-shaped curve than what we saw previously under MSIP 5. The one distinction that I want to draw out between the two systems is under MSIP 5, you have the ability to be able to attain full points or nearly full points through a combination of both status and progress or status and growth, in that there was a combination of scoring that occurred under MSIP 5 to be able to benefit a district. Under MSIP 6, that combination is removed, and those two factors or categories are really independent one of another. So under MSIP 6, you have this attainment of status points and growth points that sit separately, whereas previously under MSIP 5, the combination of the two could get you more points toward your APR. That is the key distinction and delineator between the two. So we've got some highlights certainly to be able to share with you. We are one of few districts that actually increased our APR, albeit not a huge amount, but we did go up, in that we've heard from other districts and reviewed some of that data, and that many districts actually went the opposite direction. So there's still some confusion, some frustration, but to underscore that the benefit in assessment is being able to leverage it through the year, but then at the same time make it actionable, relevant, and timely. So we're seeing some innovative states do that work, most notably Montana, who had an innovation waiver approved at the federal level. Participated in a webinar with them last week to learn more about their system. Of course, we know about Success Ready Students Network and the work going on in Missouri. But we'll share more information here in a little bit, but then also in the spring semester as we dive deeper into building level data. With that said, would certainly open it up for any questions you all have of me.
Okay. It's a lot of work.
That's the short version, yes.
Legislative priorities.
The next item we've looked at as well over the course of this fall. We got a jump start on this. Really, the first conversation we had was back in September, you'll recall. And so most recently at our study session, you provided some input, which was pretty minor, but some adjustments were made on font sizes, particularly related to that introductory sentence. So just as a reminder, if approved by the Board of Education, we will move forward with communicating to our area legislators, our representatives and senators, a copy of our legislative priorities. We'll have an introductory letter, but then we will also include some of our key documents, namely our graduate profile and our Vivid Vision and strategic plan, for example. So Pending your approval this evening, that will go out in early January, again, to our area legislators. So thank you, everyone, for taking the time to dive into this, to look at it over the course of the last several months. Another notation, pre-filing began on December 1st, and so we're watching and culling through bills that have been filed that are related to education, hundreds upon hundreds of bills to cull through. As the session begins, you'll get more weekly feedback on what's gaining traction throughout the legislature. Anything that's notable will certainly draw attention to you all as far as board awareness. So we present that to you this evening for your consideration.
Any questions or comments on the legislative priorities?
Just want to flag April 9th. This last year, our advocacy day for MSBA was on the same day as our board meeting, which was really hard to go, but this year it is not. It's April 9th, and so I think it was nice to have this legislative priorities to also in hand to go down there and talk with them. I mean, they get it in January, but it's always nice when they see it from us too, if we can carpool down there.
A little reminder.
I move the board adopt the 2024 legislative priorities as revised.
Second.
Nick?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Academic calendars.
This one you saw previously as well, and so we're bringing it to you this evening for your consideration. And these, by way of these, I mean 2 calendars. You have one for the district for 24-25 for our academic calendar, and then the second one is for Epic Elementary. That coincides but does have a couple of differences. A couple of key items to highlight again, as we've shared previously. New teacher orientation for Liberty Public Schools is scheduled for August 8th through 12th. In-service days are the 13th through 20th. First day of school is the 21st. As you fast forward into the fall semester, most notably, December 20th is the end of the first semester with an early release date. Winter vacation begins on December 23rd and runs through January 3rd with a work day on that particular day. The start of the second semester, because of the way it all falls, is January 6th. January 20th, recognition of Martin Luther King holiday. Fast forward into the month of March, spring break. We've coordinated with our Northland districts and other education programming, most notably CAPS and our career centers, to be able to have a similar spring break. And then May 23rd is slated as the last day of school for the 24-25 academic calendar. Similarly, with Epic Elementary, they have an earlier start date, an earlier new teacher in service. Their in-service is scheduled for July 25th through the 29th. As far as new teachers, July 30th through August 6th is their teacher in service, and August 7th is their first day of school. Same calendar as it relates to winter break and return of teachers as well as students. If you jump all the way to spring break, similar spring break, and then their tentative last day of school is scheduled for June 6th, and that they run a little bit deeper into the spring semester, start of the summer. So we present those 2 items for you for your consideration this evening.
Questions?
I move the board adopt the 2024-2025 academic calendars.
Second.
Nick?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Secondary course proposals.
Another item of unfinished business from the last time we met were 2 secondary course proposals. AP Pre-Calculus was presented along with Computer Hardware and Operating Systems 1 and 2. So we would just present those to you this evening for your consideration as well.
Questions, comments?
I move the board approve the AP Pre-Calculus and and Computer Hardware and Operating Systems 1 and 2 secondary course proposals.
Second.
Nick?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
New business.
First item under new business is our annual performance report, and we shared with you some preliminary information, but then also disseminated information to our staff and community on the release of this data. There, in addition, is some news coverage, primarily through our newspapers across the state, whether it's the Post-Dispatch or Springfield News Leader, the Missouri Independent. If you're familiar with that, they ran a great article unpacking some of the issues, challenges with the new APR and MSIP 6, but then also locally with our Kansas City Star. So we've invited Mr. Hand to walk us through this as far as what we're seeing, what we're learning. Before we dive into that, just a reminder, it was a couple of years ago where we shared with the board we would be participating in a pilot on the continuous improvement components of MSIP 6, which included a response to standards document. It also included a culture and climate survey, but then it also included submission for review of our strategic plan. We did that, successfully received all of those points, and then as it relates to the pilot process for MSIP 6, it's a 3-year pilot, and we are in year 2 of the pilot, albeit this year is the 3rd year of data collection that then will be reported out next year prior to MSIP 6 going live. So we're still in this pilot window, but we've got 2 years worth of data, this year being the 3rd that then informs next year's APR. I say all of that as the backdrop, and we'll turn it over to Mr. Hand to walk us through a couple of slides.
And as always, there will be a quiz at the end, so please keep notes. Thank you, Dr. Tucker, for teeing that up. I appreciate that. If you hit the next slide, as you follow along, there are pieces here that I wanted to let you know that as you follow along, there is a table of contents. As you go back to look at the presentation, we will talk about what is APR briefly, how will it differ from 2023 to 2022, the timeline, the indicators, changes in scoring, the year 2, as Dr. Tucker mentioned, the performance indicators, a reflection on performance indicators, continuous improvement, and then reflection of our continuous improvement indicators, and then the assessment participation rates and other accreditation, and then as well APR revisited from last year. How did we do from last year to this year? And then finally goals as we look forward from here. So for the next slide. As always, as we look at data in our district from our community, we look at our district and our community of learners. We have a moral obligation to use the data to benefit our community of learners we solicited from. So every bit of data that we use is really vital for our learners as we grow and learn together in our district to get better at getting better. So really, what is MSIP 6? Really, it is it provides data about the individual performance of school districts and is based upon the standards and indicators of the Missouri School Improvement Plan 6. Its scores from the APR are used to inform the accreditation classification determination made by the Missouri State Board of Education or charter renewals that are authorized by the State Board of Education. So it's an accreditation process. And you can hit the next slide. I apologize. It's hard to say that over and over again. I apologize. And you can see the features that MSIP 6 that enhance the meaningfulness of APR. And this is something that we shared last year. And then here, in the next slide, a couple of pieces that I wanted to add this year is how will the APR differ from 2022? The 2023 APR reflects the same MSIP 6 standards and indicators from 2022. It also includes updates in scoring. It includes additional growth areas in science and social studies, and I'll go in depth in those areas. And then how is APR released? There is actually a link here on the MCDS website, so you can go there and see any school district and any school in the state of Missouri by hitting this link right now. It is live. And then when will LEAs be classified using the MSIP 6 APR? Dr. Tucker was talking about we're in the year 2 of the pilot, and I'll talk about that timeline here in a little bit further in a couple of slides. Next slide, Denise. And then here we talked about the difference between MSIP 5 in 2018 to 2022, the percentage of differences in scoring between districts, to 2023 now. And as you can see, we went from 59% of districts that were 95% or above scoring to now 1%, less than 1% actually, and it's still less than 1% now in 2023. And so the next slide, you can see the timeline of where we are. In 2022, 2023, we're getting our data from the 2022-2023 school year. We were supposed to receive this data in the fall. That did not happen. We received it around Christmas time, so this was our Christmas time gift for the holidays. And so that is here now. We were able to get through this information, though, quickly to bring it to the board, as well as give it to schools and to our district. And so we have lots of celebrations and areas of growth to walk through today. So this is exciting to actually share this information today. So APR indicators, really two areas we've talked about in the past, performance and continuous improvement. Under performance indicators, you'll find academic achievement status, academic achievement growth, success-ready students, graduation rate, and graduate follow-up. And then under continuous improvement, continuous improvement plan, CSIP, climate and culture survey, response to standards, which is actually going to start beginning of 2024, which is something we did within the pilot, so something we fulfilled that Dr. Tucker has already talked about. Other required documentation and components of standard success-ready students. And the next slide shows then the difference in scoring between the last 3 years. So in 2022, when we last spoke about APR, the total number of points that we saw as a district was 180. You can see at the bottom there was 180 based upon all the areas that we talked about, from achievement status all the way down to success ready. This year now, the goalpost has been moved back a little bit to 192. If we're talking about football here a little bit, I think we talked about football earlier this morning, so I'm going to use that analogy all throughout if that's okay with everybody, because we're all on the same team. And now the goalpost is pushed back next year a little bit more to 200. You see how that works?
On that note, of the 550 districts, if you look at each individual district, they may not have the same number of points possible in their district.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
In part, K-8s compared to K-12s, but it ranges as much as 192 currently. It'll be 200 by 2024, but you've got 132, 160, 140, 44, 70. I mean, it is all over the place. So as you lay these districts side by side, you just have to know that you need to know or dig into their numbers to know how many they're actually being assessed on.
So if you go to the next slide, you will see our 2022 scores below and 2023 scores above. The first area you'll see points possible that you'll see in 2022, total points were 180. And now total points possible were 192, as we talked about the goalpost moving. Points earned for us this year were 154.9, which is 11 extra points than the year before we've earned. In continuous improvement, we added 2 extra points. And performance, we added to 103.9. In overall percentage, you'll see that in percentage earned, 74.2. 98, for continuous improvement, and then 80.6, which is a growth of 0.7%. Now, to put that in context, the median growth rate of all districts across the state of Missouri, okay, all districts, was a negative 1.1%. So across the entire state, all 551 school districts, was a negative 1.1%. So if you were a district just across the board, it was a negative 1.1%. And Dr. Tucker mentioned districts that had less points than 192. A lot of those districts, smaller districts that maybe would have had about 120 points, 142 points, districts that had areas like subgroups that didn't report cells. So they didn't have students like 50 students in a subgroup, so they would get 0 points. They had less points. And so they saw more growth at about 5.58%. Districts that had a total point percentage of growth, 318 districts we found on average rate of negative 6.01% across the board, comparable. So what we're finding is across the board, We grew as a district greater than the median growth rate across the state.
And roughly every district would have had science and social studies added in this year, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
And since you bring that up, though,
Yes.
the predictability on growth for science and social studies is actually predicated on how they performed in math and ELA.
Yes.
And so
I can
that...
talk, go ahead, keep going. Keep
Sorry.
going if you want. No, keep going.
I know just enough.
Yes, you're dangerous.
So then, in talking with the University of Missouri system, who helped design this, and their psychometricians, they felt confident that your performance within math and ELA was an equivalent predictor of where a student would grow in science and social studies.
Yes.
That's as deep as I got right now. With that said, though, you've introduced social studies and science this year. So then we're still trying to figure that piece out. So then, as Christopher will share, we've seen academic gains in virtually all of our categories with status. When you look to growth, that's where you're going to start seeing districts differ. If they're high achieving, then they may not have as much room for growth to attain all those growth points. If they are lower achieving, they certainly have more room to grow, and maybe their students are growing at a higher rate. It just depends upon where you are as a district, but then you drill that down to a building level as well.
So if we look at this at a deeper level, at your performance total, so in your performance area, we talked about performance and continuous improvement, you have ELA, mathematics, science on the far left side, social studies, and that is just status. You can see the green is over to the far right. What lays down on that side is MPIs and your designation over on that side, okay? You have all students and student groups. It gives you a point possible and a point earned. This is called the status area, okay? This is how our students score on our tests for EOCs and math. Remember, we've talked about MPIs before, Math Performance Index. This is how our kids calculate, they score their MPIs and how they score overall. Below that is what is called growth areas, okay? So academic achievement growth, ELA, mathematics, science, and social studies. And they take those scores, and MU takes those scores, and they have a project run by, I believe, a gentleman named Eric Parsons. It's a project. And he's kind of, well, no, it's his name, and so it's from MU, and they run it and they put it into a whole system, and then from there they give us these numbers. And if you look at it in this sort of way, I did an analogy similar, and one way you could look at this is by taking these numbers, like Dr. Tucker talked about. You could have some areas of really extreme growth, and if you were up against those numbers that you've had that are high MPIs, and it's difficult to have that growth, I took it, since we were talking about football today, I took, for example, Patrick Mahomes when he had his MVP year of 2018-19. He threw for 5,097 yards in 2018-19, okay? He was predicted the next year to throw for about 5,200 yards, okay, the following year. That's 19 and 20. He only threw for 4,031 yards and 26 touchdowns. But that following year, what happened? They won the Super Bowl. It was a very big year. So sometimes, just because you can do certain things and calculations, doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. And we don't hide from growth scores. We use all sorts of growth scores. We use iReady. We use lots of different things. We're using NWA right now. And sometimes the growth scores do show us an accurate picture. We use a flashlight to look at those and illuminate certain areas, but sometimes it doesn't show us the whole picture.
Well, is it fair to say, I mean, this is the area that most people across the state have questions on because, I mean, you get some guidance as to, here's some resources to look at as to how we're looking at this, but we don't get the formula, for instance, right?
We get an explanation of how it's done?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and we're still working on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's when I read that Missouri Independent article today. I think the thing that I hadn't really appreciated looking at this before is that our measure isn't the same. I mean, you're making that point, that we're not measured the same as every other district on this. So our growth target is calculated by them to be a different number than another district, and it's, we don't have necessarily.
When it comes to growth, you are categorized with districts in that same area. So, for example, as it mentions, below average or target, or what's the other category? On track.
On track.
Yeah.
So you are grouped with your districts, other districts that are in that same space, and there is a range of points that are assigned. That then those districts are kind of charted out accordingly to their rank order. And so there is only one district that can receive full points within that particular category. Everyone else falls below. It'd be like all of us taking the same test and say, there's only going to be one perfect score. There's only going to be 199%, 198%, 197%. That's how points are being attributed within those categories under growth. There is a 92-page document, Comprehensive School Improvement Plan Guide, if you're interested. We did use this to inform our presentation to the board last March to try to walk everyone through the calculation. Took that a step further, shared it with principals last spring. We also shared it with anybody that would listen. We shared that with them to be able to try to educate, and even then, it's pretty technical once you get into the psychometrics of it. More importantly, here we are in December, last year in March, trying to make an impact on this year's students and instruction. There in and of itself lies the problem.
Exactly.
When we have better means of being able to timely respond and react as a classroom teacher to the individual needs of our students. But Mr. Hannon, that's your time, not mine.
No, and the one thing we have to remember too is these are predicted scores. It doesn't mean that we did not grow. We grew, and we can show you that all day long within the MPIs that we have. But it's just based on the predicted scores that we have. This is the outcome that we have based on that measurement that they had in MU. Below that, you will see that they have success-ready students. Under there, it says CCR assessments, college career assessments. We actually grew 25% within our students there, and that's based upon two areas within ACT, a number of our students that participate in those assessments, but also how they performed. Our advanced credits area, 100%. Graduation rate, we received 100% scores there, and then graduate follow-up, we received 100% in that area. Since we spent a lot of time in this section, you can see that our performance indicator celebrations that we just talked about in terms of targets, hitting an ELA for all students, social studies, which we have one of our favorite teachers back there, thank you, sir, receiving 100% in that area as well. Graduate follow-up, which was an area that we charted to perform better in, 100%, and then success-ready students in graduation rate at 100% in both areas. But again, I wanted to point out that, in this area, this is a performance indicator that we have the below average there because that's something we are going to continue to look at. We're not going to shy away from growth. That's something that we have iReady. We look at growth. That's something we talk about every single day, but we want to know more about it. And that is something that we just, everyone's scrambling right now by reading the articles. They don't know more. And so we're going to continue to look at that. On continuous improvement indicators, the improvement plan for the district, 100% of the points were awarded. The LEA response to standards, I'm happy to let you know before 2024, I'm able to see into the future. We're going to get 100% of the points there because we were part of the plan to work on that. Climate and culture surveys, 100% of points there. That is stuff that we do with Panorama and our University of Missouri surveys that we work on. The KEA, Dr. Schmitz and Dr. Wilson did an amazing job with our kindergarten staff and our principals to fulfill the 4 points in that area. ICAPS, Dr. Van Batavia and Dr. Moore and everybody else did an amazing job to get 100% of the points there. I left the color at 75% in attendance. Even though we got 3 out of 4, many of the districts did not get 3 out of 4 out of attendance. That's something we have to continue to look at, though, because attendance is something that even our every district is looking at right now, and it's something that we continue to look at ourselves. CT expansion, we were able to get 2 points in that area, thanks to Dr. Solari and Colleen Jones. And as you can see there for audit, annual Secretary of the Board report, and timely submission of core data, thanks to Bob Citro, 100% in those areas as well. And so you can see in celebrations and reflections in the next page, all those areas I've noted, as you can see. And then finally, they have one more section, which is assessment and accreditation indicators. Our principals and teachers do an amazing job to make sure that all students receive a quality assessment opportunity. And as you can see here, we're at 99%. A lot of districts, when you look in there, that's 97%, 96%, 98%. Our teachers create a quality testing environment. Our principals create a quality testing environment. It is off the charts. And so there's nothing I can say but kudos to all of them to have these numbers. It's not easy to do. So thank you to all of them. And you can see in the next page, there's a reflection there as well.
Can I just ask a quick question, Christopher? Sure. You've got total test records. The valid test scores, does that mean something happened with the test that it could not be submitted as a valid test?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So they didn't finish it, or?
Didn't finish it, or there was something happened that was invalid of some kind.
Okay.
And then finally, you'll see here the 2022 APR revisited. So this was something, as you remember on our video, these were areas that we talked about continuing to enhance last year, 2022, and then 4 action areas to improve. And what I was able to do was go back and look to see, are those areas that we continued to work on and actually hit for the following year. So we were able to, like I said before, use Panorama and for our climate and culture surveys at 100%, the KEAs, ELA, social studies, grad follow-up, all of those. And then the next slide is really what are we looking for our next steps. And these are all pieces that you've heard before from Dr. Moore, from our team, and pretty much everyone in the central office, as well as our teachers and our leadership and our building levels, everything from graduation rate to continue to enhance kindergarten, the ICAPs, the reading success plans, and performance in science. But also looking at 4 action areas to improve, which is student attendance. College and career assessments, we can easily get 10 points. We believe that's something we can continue to do and strive. And then performance and subgroup growth in both ELA, math, science, and social studies, that's something we can continue to grow and move. And then performance in math. That's something that we've continued to talk about.
And to reiterate, some of that is already in the works this year, as
Yes.
we had reflected on last year's information, put some of those pieces in place with the help of our team in the back, and our building principals and leadership teams, more importantly. So much of this is already in play in hopes of seeing the needle move a little bit as we look into next year and this year's data.
So what is the student group versus the all student?
So the student group is students that are in special education, pre-reduced lunch, student groups in various demographic groups.
Used to be subgroups, but now it's just
Now they
been
call it student groups.
reworded
But
to student groups.
But it's defined for us. I mean, somebody's picking it out of our students, I guess, based upon the records that we submit.
That's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it only counts if your districts or your buildings have enough to count as a subgroup. So if you have, a smaller or lesser number, then that isn't counted for you or against you, depending on how the performance of those students is.
It's in the black box.
It is, and it's a third.
And I think the idea is it's important that you don't want a school district that's overall performing great, that it's a bunch of people that are high performing and you're leaving behind some groups. So that's what that was No Child Left Behind.
Yeah.
But
this doesn't allow you, if you're performing great, then you can't grow.
Yeah.
So you're good. You lost half your points there.
Yeah.
So
That's the sword, right? The
Yeah.
double-edged sword. But to you're both correct, right? So then it's, how do you get down to the individual level? And that is what DESE is trying to message with MSIP 6, to their credit, and I'll give them that.
Yes.
They're wanting you to look beyond the APR score or percentage that you receive and utilize the data to drill down to the individual child, which, by the way, we've been doing. So I'll credit them for that, but at the same time, as you look at the calculations, as we've talked about this evening and previously, it's hard to wrap your head around all of that.
And the building, I mean.
That's a whole nother layer, that's right.
DESE's going to building.
Yeah.
That's.
I mean, I'll say anecdotally, I mean, just the times that I have been in buildings, I'm so impressed with how even students are coming up and celebrating their growth. With, I mean, the fact that we are talking with students and including them in this whole process and encouraging them to grow. They are sharing about their. I took my mid-year iReady and I went up 20 points in math and I went up 50 points in reading, and they are so proud when they say that. I mean, like, they are aware. I mean, then again, that's anecdotal data. But.
You know, that's the one thing. I ran into a parent this on the way in here, actually, that was talking about their son who had huge growth in iReady in reading and was almost in tears because of it. And that talks about one of our goals, which is creating a school environment that engages and inspires all students. And I think that's the piece that you can't quantify. And I think we forget about that sometimes. I think we look at some of these numbers and think that that's the biggest thing. We need to, put that in the newspaper and do all those sort of things. We forget about that piece. Our teachers do amazing things every day, and that's it right there.
Questions of Mr. Hand?
No, agree. Love everything that you've walked through here. This is great. But again, it comes down to what does the public look at, right? The less engaged individuals who are looking for how is our district performing, they go here. And they see this score and they're like, well, it's either good or it's bad, right? And they're going to take it for what it is. And yes, we're having the conversations about continuous improvement with the students, not in this context of this report, but that's where it gets lost. And so this is what they look at, and this is how they judge. And it kills me.
Well, and also organizations that don't maybe value public education, right? And so part of the problem is we're talking about these other metrics and ways that we look to measure growth that are not postmortems, right, in essence. And so, I think part of the problem is the perception of what it is and what it's saying versus what we know is happening in practice.
Right.
So.
Well, and I guess, to me, the other piece of it is that, we're piloting this, but we're simultaneously leaving this behind. And so, right? That's what
You summed it up.
So
and that actually was communicated from the state board whenever we presented the Success Ready Students Network ideas and recommendations to them, and that they were enthusiastic about it. And I remember the words, do it and do it fast. I think in part because they recognize perhaps that MSIP has run its course. That's been around since the 90s. And every iteration has a lifespan of about 4 to 5 years. MSIP 5 ran from 2012 to 2021. It had a little bit longer lifespan. But even at the state board level, they recognize, okay, we need to gain some traction to something different, and they're seeing it in some of these other states.
But as you work on one plan, and you get better at it, and then you shift to another one, well, you can't compare yourself to that one anymore because you switch tracks, and now you're on this one, and now we're going to shift tracks, and we're going to be on another one. I'm just wondering, I guess, as you're integral to the Success Ready Student Network, is there a way to jump so that there was an evaluation system for that led this in a way? Could that system use the genius at Mizzou who has all the numbers, right, to create something that you could plug in iReady to that cranks out something that, if we're going to jump this, let's jump it to something that is being accepted by the or attempting to be accepted, and use the mechanics that we have to plug it in. So that, anyway,
You're on the right track. And we spent some time last week, Dr. Van Batavia, myself, Dr. Moore, I know Dr. Wilson and Dr. Schmitz have engaged on this as well, but last week the goal was to design a preliminary APR, if that's what it's even called, for whatever this next version, Success Ready Students Network, would look like. So that is in the works. There's a timeline to that, to be able to share that with the State Board of Education, submit a federal waiver for consideration. So there's a lot of pieces in motion. It's just a matter of all the dominoes falling at the right time. The part that we've navigated is the recognition that we have to live in two spaces. We live in the space which is LPS, and that we believe is the right work, and that is through your assessment, navigating every single child individually, personalized through the year, knowing that it's academic rigor, but it is also so much more, right? It's activities, it's relationships, it's all those pieces. If we're getting that right, the rest should take care of itself. And so now it's a matter of continuing to do the right work in lieu of an accreditation system or a not quite realized system that we aspire to. The other thing I'm encouraging you to keep track on is this legislative session, because there are some bills that parallel some of this work that might gain some traction in changing how things are done in Missouri at the State Department level. And at what point does all of that converge to the right work? I think that's what we have to be watching as well. So.
Anything else? Okay.
My favorite line, more to come. So thank you, Mr. Meehan.
Always.
Always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Policy.
We have one board policy revision that inserts the phrase artificial intelligence. It's policy EHB, technology usage. That's just for first read this evening. Mull it over. If you have any suggestions to the language change, let us know in January.
Did a human insert that?
We did. We did. We actually did. That's our wording. We did want to follow our usual process, and so first read this evening, second read in January. So that is it on that item.
And then contracts and purchases.
6.3, we'll turn that over to Mr. Anderson to walk us through.
Sure, thank you. This is just, we made a decision to accelerate this contract. Didn't work with the scheduling of the actual event. This is with a group or an individual, I'm not sure. It's Hacky. I'm sure I mangled that.
Good work.
So apologies to Mr. Itzhaki. And then I think one other point, I think this came out today, that there were a few exhibits referenced in the initial report. We realized that several of them were not necessary because it's a virtual event, and so we put back in, we added in one exhibit. So just that you're aware of that, and we just ask for a confirmation of that tonight.
Questions?
I move the board approve the emergency purchases and actions as presented.
Second.
Nick?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Legislation and advocacy. Board of Education. Anything? There's lots of bills being filed. We've already talked about that. All right, my computer's dying. Upcoming meetings and conferences is listed there. Karen, you mentioned the 9th of April is
Advocacy Day for MSBA.
Yes. And NSBA will be tidying up on the day before.
Oh, goodness.
Just an FYI, if you're going to that. But that's usually done by midday. And then, of course, a few meetings, study sessions such as that. Any board remarks?
Yes. I had an experience with Dr. Schmidt taking a tour with the instructional coaches. Spent part of the afternoon at Franklin and at Liberty High School, and it was a great experience. I enjoyed it. One of the thoughts that I had that, our teachers need support and what these instructional coaches are about. And of course, I spent some time spending some money in my head. What if we had more? You know, if something's good, ideally you want more of it.
More money or more instructional coaches, or
Well,
both?
it would take both.
Okay.
But in any case,
It's Christmas.
It was very eye-opening, and I was deeply impressed with the quality and the commitment among that staff. I see we're losing two, though. I think I read that. Two instructional
You did.
coaches. Did I read that wrong? Okay.
We're replacing one who left late last year, so we'll replace that, and then we have one who's retiring.
Okay.
But we will replace that as well.
Yeah, I acknowledge that. Yeah. Okay.
That's actually a good segue into the spring semester, and you all know that we go through the budgeting process, and that starts in early January. It actually never ends, but yeah.
Well, and I
good
think,
remarks.
to your point, AJ, it may not be a one-for-one replacement, but how do we scale that more intentionally to take some of those benefits to a broader audience more frequently, or something along those lines, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be an individual. It certainly could be some other potential tactic.
And philosophically, one of the things that's changed, and Dr. Schmitz, jump in here if you'd like. Philosophically, one of the things that has changed for our instructional coaches is historically it has been as a teacher, if you need it, come and seek it out, right? And so it's been more initiated by the teacher and really looking to reverse that so that that coach can have a broader understanding of the building and kind of a just-in-time support from that standpoint. What am I missing, Dr. Schmitz? I'm sure there's more to it than just that.
A perfect example, I say this year we have LMP in the district, and so those coaches are able to take what they learn at LMP, partner with the teachers, and go back into that practice in the classrooms as class and buildings. So that's just one example of how we're taking it to a broader base where the teachers can experience that.
The other delineator, too, depending on your building and its designation as a title building or not, your title designation comes with additional supports, additional resources, additional professional development specific to those needs that may not be available to every building. So the support is provided in multiple ways depending upon the composition of your building and what those goals or needs are. So,
Well,
all good thoughts.
It clearly says the teacher's not out there by themselves.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Nor does it solely task the building principal or assistant principal with being the instructional leader in the building. That's really the value in that instructional coach. You certainly want them to be strong instructional leaders if you're a principal or an assistant principal, but now they have that partnership in that instructional coach as well. So.
From the Christmassy side of the room, happy holidays.
Humbug.
That was perfect. We hope you guys enjoy your break and take some time for yourselves.
Yeah, I know.
I know, gosh only knows what's going to happen in January. Snowmen will appear.
I move the board adjourn.
Go.
Second.
Nick?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Goodbye.
Yes.
Motion carries.